Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast, season 2, all about winning, here with Chad Himes and Bob Stewart. My name is Ben Kinney. You're stuck with us three. Like always, Chad, we are in the middle of one of our series, which is called
Talent. The Talent series, Ben.
I like that.
Still need some echo in the background or something.
He's got a little bit of enthusiasm. We've already gone through the intro to talent.
Yes.
Part 1. Part 2, we had a lot of fun, and we went through a model for finding talent.
Yes.
Marketing, referrals, prospecting for talent. Hope you super enjoyed the first 2 parts of the talent series.
And hopefully you sent your resume to Bob, too, because
Bob's always hiring.
That's why we're doing this.
right.
For sure. Now we're at part 3. Part 3 is super deep, super long, but it could be one of the more valuable podcasts you've ever listened to, because this is about the actual hiring process. So we're going to walk you through ours. Now, you don't have to use ours, but you need to have one.
Yes.
You need to have one for a variety of reasons. One, it ensures that you properly vet talent.
Mm-hmm.
2, it protects you in employment discrimination lawsuits, especially the ones that are invalid or, just accusations, but you didn't do anything wrong.
Yep.
Because if you follow a process and you treat everybody the same way and you document the process, it's easy for you to show that, no, you actually exited out of the interview process for a specific reason that was not discrimination.
Great point.
So this is for our protection. Also, if you're the owner of a company and other people in your world have authority to hire, this ensures that they are following the same exact process that you do.
There you go.
Now, there's lots of classes out there. I've taken some in the real estate industry. I've taught a lot in the real estate industry. They've been called things like Recruit Select or Career Visioning. I'm sure every industry has a program around hiring, or if they don't, they should.
Yes.
This process has been adapted and created after all of the things I've learned in my career and over thousands of interviews over the last nearly 20 years, hiring people in all roles.
That was going to be my question. How many do you think really you and those people below you that follow your system because they have authority to hire people, how many of these hiring process, interview processes have you, do you think, been responsible for?
I bet you every day of the week, on average, for the last 10 plus years, I've done at least one.
You personally?
Personally.
That doesn't even count the people that are in your organization that have the power to hire, that you have taught them the process to go
We
through.
probably did 50 last week in the organization,
Sure.
Yep. Sometimes that means I just did the first step of the process that we're going to talk about, Chad.
Yep.
Sometimes it meant I spent the entire day with somebody working through this entire process.
Okay.
For me, the hiring process could take a couple days, or it could take a couple weeks, a couple months. And in some situations, it's taken a couple years for either our company to be ready for that hire or for that person to be ready to make a move. So this is a process. And we're going to walk you through the process literally from having a lead or an application to handing them the offer letter in this piece of the series.
Okay.
Sound fun?
It's going to work in every industry. Not going to matter what you're looking for. Maybe you're looking to hire even a nanny, something around that. This process is going to work and protect you at the same time.
I've actually been considering hiring a nanny.
You probably need one.
Is there such thing as a manny? Because I think a lot of us guys
Only
need...
if you watch This Is Us, Ben. And everybody out there who watches This Is Us was thinking the same thing. So we'll just leave it at that.
No, I feel like that was a jab, and I don't know what the jab is about. Do you know that show, Bob?
Yeah, I watched it. I don't know. I fell out halfway through the first season.
Okay.
You
Anyway,
got out lucky.
we all need somebody to take care of us. So here we are. We listened to step 2 of the talent series of finding talent, and we got some applications,
Okay.
some emails, some text.
Yep.
We got some referrals. Hey, you should really speak to this person. And number 3, we just cold called some people.
Yep.
So we're going to start at that step.
Okay.
That we have a lead, and we're going to go to step 1 of the hiring process, which for me is the screening call.
Dun, dun, dun. Right? It just unveiled. There's some sound effect going in there. I know there will be. The screening call.
Now, it's called a screening call because I tend to do it on the phone. Let me ask you, gentlemen, a question. Why do you think the screening call on the phone is so important?
I'm thinking, Ben, the screening call.
Like, are you saying as opposed to it being something where you meet them in person?
Yep.
Why do you do it as a call?
Yep.
I give up.
It's harder to display certain things about yourself over the phone, so you'll really get a feel for the people that you're talking with.
Why do we have...
See, we don't always have the answers either, folks.
Why do we have parachutes in our plane?
Just in case we
You
have to
what?
jump.
Yeah, just in case you have to bail out. Now, let's say that you had 30 applications.
Gotcha. Okay.
How long does a face-to-face interview take?
Oh,
15 minutes minimum, and you probably feel like you got to give them at least 30, you know,
Or an
it's
hour.
Rude.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? When you're face-to-face, you're committed to that experience because
Okay.
you want that candidate to have a great experience with your company,
yep.
right?
Because they might just become a client instead of an
Yeah.
employee. Sure.
However, we may not have time to sit through 30 interviews for an hour when over half of them weren't real candidates.
You wanted to bail out
Yep.
5 minutes in.
So the purpose of the screening interview is to very quickly vet if you want to consider the applicant a candidate.
Okay. This prevents no-shows, which is now wasting your time somewhere. If they don't answer the phone, great. You're just on to the next call.
Yeah. A good screening interview with a bad candidate is 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay.
A good screening interview with a good candidate might be 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay. Still better than the half-hour minimum that you're giving if it's a face-to-face.
Yeah.
Okay.
Back to the screening call. Chad,
Yes.
ring.
Hello?
Chad, my name is Ben Kinney. I saw that you recently applied for a position at our company in the accounting department. Do you have a few minutes?
Absolutely. I have a few minutes.
Awesome. Tell me a little bit about you. Stop. He doesn't need to. Great. Where do you work currently? Great. Stop. Where'd you work prior? Why'd you leave? What'd you do prior? Awesome. Why'd you apply for this job? That's great. Do you live locally? Are you currently employed? Awesome. Chad, here's what I'd like to do. I have a handful of these interviews to go through, and I'm working out my schedule over the coming weeks. I would love to get back to you and see if we could schedule a face-to-face time. That would be if I was medium about this person, meaning I'm interested, but they aren't wowing me. If I was hot on this person, Chad, I would love to meet face-to-face. Can you make it to my office today, or would tomorrow be better? I'm going right for the close.
You're going fast on that then.
Because I don't want him to interview with somebody else and not have an opportunity to work with us.
Okay.
If I was cold on the person, Chad, I super appreciate you applying for this role. I have lots more to do in this process, and we have lots of other opportunities coming up in the future. Let me follow up with you in the coming weeks or coming months and see if we can get face-to-face, if we can find a role that matches with your experience, your track record, et cetera. Would that be okay?
Sure.
Awesome. I exited out with class,
Yep.
so to speak. The goal of the screening interview is to identify, do they have the skill set, experience, right? Aptitude, communication skills, attitude to invest 30 minutes to an hour of your time in step 2.
So, Ben, that means we have to be really clear on that list of skills, aptitudes. We have to have that description of who that role is going to be so we know what we're looking for on that call.
That was in our homework early in the talent series,
Right.
right? Is writing down what does that talented individual look like?
But this time we're specific on a role. It's not just what does talent look like. Oh, I want a go-getter. I want this. I want that. It's, okay, they got to have accounting knowledge, or they got to know how Excel works, or they got to know how to use a telephone, or whatever that's going to be. We need to know what those are before we even start making these calls so we can identify if they are someone that might at least be medium, warm in that case, or better.
Which means that you might have a list of common questions that you want to ask for your screening interview in front of you so you don't forget.
Right.
You might write down, here's your generic, hey, tell me about you. Where do you work now? What'd you do prior? Those sort of questions. But you might have a few that are tailored for each unique position. Like, tell me a little bit about your accounting experience. Have you used QuickBooks Online or NetSuite or whatever the tool that might be, right?
Yep.
And you might be asking very
specific questions in that case?
Yeah,
Yep.
maybe things like, have you ever managed anybody?
Right.
What's the most amount of people that have reported to you?
Okay.
Right. What's your education? Do you have any certifications? You might ask those questions.
Okay.
Once you're done with the screening interview, you have step 0.5. The 0.5 step is after each step, you ask yourself, do I want to go forward or not? Do I want to go forward or not? So let's say we do want to go forward. Then we move into the full step 2, which is the initial interview. The initial interview is an opportunity for you to spend 30 minutes to an hour on Zoom or face-to-face.
Got a preference?
I prefer face-to-face,
Right.
but a lot of people are remote, so it's the second best,
Okay.
right? Walking through some of the stuff that you covered in the screening call, but in more detail.
Okay.
I like to cover what's called the life story in this particular stage of the hiring process. Life story, Bob, is going to sound a little like this. So, Bob, where'd you go to college?
Eastern Washington University.
Awesome. What'd you study?
Finance.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah.
Awesome. When did you leave there?
2000.
2000. What was the first opportunity that you took, your first job after that point?
I went to work for a company that did remodels on big box retail stores.
In 2000?
Yeah.
And how long did you work with them?
2 years.
2 years. So from 2000 to 2002, you worked with this big box retailer, and I would ask him the name, and I might ask him some other questions like, did you enjoy it?
No.
Okay. What was your least favorite part?
The time. Like we worked nights.
Awesome. What was your favorite part?
The people. Like I love the crews that I worked with.
What'd you learn while you were there?
Time management, people management.
Who was your boss?
Guy named Steve Crosley.
Steve. Is Steve still around?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I've just jotted that note down because later in the process, I might refer back and check references on individuals, maybe that Bob didn't even give me in his reference worksheet. I might go back to Bob and say, hey, you mentioned earlier about working with this guy named Steve. Would you be offended if I reached out to him? And I try to track Steve down however I could do that.
So you got that answer from Bob without him even thinking about it. You weren't even asking about references yet. He might not have wanted to give you Steve, but boy, you just pulled Steve's name out of that conversation just by listening, taking your notes as you always do, and being able to pay attention.
Yeah.
Okay.
Taking notes, super important. We should have set the conversation up with that. Bob, you eventually left there. I assume it's because you didn't like working nights and you had a new opportunity. What was the next opportunity that you took?
I went to work as a loan officer.
A loan officer. Wow. Yeah. How old were you then? That's pretty young for a loan officer.
23.
23. Awesome. Yeah. One thing to point out is that you have to be careful with age-related questions. Yeah. It could set you up for, depending on the state and area that you live in, it's a little bit risky. So I might write that one out of my common questions.
But you did, like you're doing this timeline, and you've already, if you're keen, Ben, I graduated college in 2000, which would make me about 21 years old. If you can go back, ask what year I graduated high school. But so that if I was in that job 2 years coming out of college, now I'm about 23 years old. Like, you can almost do this math in your head, right? You don't have to necessarily ask how old I was or something like that.
Right. So as I go through this life story, I have a few goals. One, I want to establish a timeline of everything Bob's done since his formal education stopped, whether that was high school or 2-year college or 4-year or an MBA, whatever that might be, from that point forward. Chad, I'm looking for blocks of time, how long he stayed, why he left, looking for trends in that.
So you're looking to see, was he someone who stayed at a job a long time, or was he someone who every year is bouncing from job to job? You're looking for the trends of what's going on in Bob's recent history or Rob's whole history, so you know what kind of employee you're looking at getting.
Yep.
Are there any things that jump out at you, Ben? I mean, I'm sure you could go through it and you could find someone you employ that was a great hire that had lots of jobs and like every year was changing something and you ended up finding the right thing for them. And then I'm sure you have people you've hired who had long histories of staying where they are. Do you have a trend that you see in that, though, that our audience can be paying attention to and watching for?
I care more about the explanation.
Okay.
Chad, it looks like you jump around a lot.
I did.
Yeah, and you had lots of different positions.
Yes.
Tell me why. And then I would allow him to answer that question.
Okay.
Is that something that I should be concerned with if you were to work with us, Chad? Are you just going to be here for a year or two, get bored like every other job? I'm willing to ask very specific and direct questions.
Okay.
In the life story, looking for every position, the time frame at which it was, and I'm looking for gaps. Like why, you'll see sometimes on resumes, there'll be a 4-year gap of no employment. That could be a job that they omitted.
Right.
Because they got fired or terminated or stole or legal or something like that.
Okay.
Could be that they just took time off for a couple of years or they had a kid or whatever that might be. I just asked the question. It looks like there's a little bit of a break. What'd you do between that and that? Awesome. Great. When was your next opportunity? What was that called? Who'd you work with? Who was your boss? How are you paid? Not how much. In some states, it's illegal to ask how much they're paid. How are you paid? Great. As you walk through this process, I'm getting them all the way up to today.
Okay.
When you're done with that, you should see all sorts of things. Are they victims? Do they have a trajectory of success? Are they growing? What'd they learn? Do they always take responsibility for the good things and bad things? Could they only point out bad things about the previous bosses? You learn a ton by going through this experience that we call the life story. What's going through both of your minds right now?
I got a few things in there. And the first thing that's coming to my mind, Ben, is you're saying life story, yet it sounds to me like you just took Bob through a work history. So are you including other parts of that life story, or are you being careful on certain things you can't ask? How much are you getting outside of that and getting into what's your health during these times, or what are your goals during these times? How much are you talking about things other than their job history?
I might ask a question like, during that 4-year period, what was a personal highlight for you? Or what was a personal struggle? What was your lowest moment during that period? What was your highest high during that period?
Okay.
And they might volunteer. I got married, I got divorced. What'd you learn from that? Well, I learned that I could do it all on my own. That's awesome. You should be proud. So what'd you do next? And then you move in and transition into the next thing.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Absolutely, it does.
When you're done with this, few things are going to happen. One, you haven't talked about your company at all. You haven't bragged about your company. You haven't talked about the role. You aren't talking at all. You spent 80, 90% of the entire meeting talking about them. It might have been the very first interview that this person's ever had where they felt like the person took the time to get to know them.
And I know people have said that to you before.
It's another way of saying, I took the time to build rapport.
Okay.
When I'm done with that life story, I might say, wow, Bob, that's an impressive track record. You should be super proud. What is it that you would like to know about our company? And then I give him a couple opportunities to ask about the company or about the role. I might follow up with some other questions. Bob, what did you do to prepare for this initial interview? And he's going to tell me, did he prepare or didn't he prepare? If he says, well, I went to some websites, I did these sort of things, I will immediately go back. That's awesome. What'd you learn? So then I can see how much he invested in that time. Well, I learned about your culture. Great. Tell me about that.
You ever stump some people? You ever
All
get
the
some
time.
just bald-faced liars right to your
yeah.
face?
Oh, yeah. Well, I only looked at it really quickly. Interesting. Why do you think it was that you didn't invest the time into researching the company that you're saying you want to work for? Well, you called me 2 hours ago. Okay, that makes sense. I just ask the question. None of them eliminate the person.
Now, wait a minute. None of them eliminate the person, yet if you're seeing a trend that's
No one thing, Chad.
okay, I was going to say, so if you're seeing a trend that is a negative trend, you're seeing this person's a victim, this person has a 1-year job history and there's no good reason except they keep up. How long until you pull the ripcord on that parachute in this interview? I mean, are you going to say, no, I'm going to give them the hour and take them through it? Or are you going to say, it's clear to me quickly that in person asking these questions, I need to just bail out of this interview now?
I'm willing to walk away at any moment, whether it's 15 minutes or 30 minutes or 45 minutes.
So how do you gracefully get out of it? Like Bob's answering all those questions and you're looking at, oh yeah, he left this job and he's blaming the boss. Oh, he left this job, he's blaming the coworkers for it. How do you not continue to waste 30, 40 minutes, whatever it is, and gracefully exit out of the interview? Because we all have been there.
2 scenarios.
Okay.
2 real life scenarios. One, I said, Bob, you seem like a really smart person and you got a great heart and you're intelligent. But every time I ask you a question, you say something negative about the previous place that you worked. Why is that? And based on that response, I might decide if I want to inject or not. Sometimes it simply means that Bob is just nervous.
Okay.
So what I might say is, Bob, are you nervous? Your questions are short or you're whatever. Are you nervous? And if he says, yeah, I'm nervous, I might say, great, let's go for a walk. And I might take the person and walk down to Starbucks and buy them a coffee and walk back because it changes the atmosphere.
Sure.
Sometimes I just simply say, are you nervous? And they say, actually, yeah. And I say, there's nothing to be afraid of, right? This is just us getting to know each other. Take a deep breath. Would you like a water? Can I grab you something else? Let's just take a break. And then the whole second part of the interview goes better.
Okay.
Here's the second scenario. Interviewing a guy at a restaurant in Seattle with one of our managers. And he made a comment about his spouse and his kid. And I just interrupted. I said, hey, I want to let you know right now that I don't think we're a match. And my manager looked at me and he looked at me. I'm like, anybody that would speak that way about their spouse or their family, I can't even imagine what they'd say about me. And I just want you to know that you're not a match for our culture or our company. But thanks for coming in today. You can leave. And the person I'm serious. Thank you for your time. The person stands up and leaves. My manager's looking at me. I'm like, yeah, we don't tolerate that, right? Willing to have a tough conversation and say things like that. But first, I dig in deep enough to see if it's something else that's happening.
That bluntness, by the way, I've been in this, I don't know if you remember this, Ben. We had a guy that flew to a city we were at and wanted to show you a business plan. And he walked into the room and in the 10 minutes in, you basically told him, like, you're not ready for this. Like, you go back, get these 3 things, and then maybe we can meet again. And you just ended it. It was blunt, right? Like, I was uncomfortable in that setting, but it was just to the point. It was kind, but it was blunt. And that's what I hear here. You just be blunt.
Well, it's for the good of you and probably them. You're wasting both of your time if you continue the conversation.
So in the initial interview, I want you to think about, what are we trying to figure out?
Okay.
Are you a match for them? Are they a match for you? Do they have the skill set, work ethic, personality, track record, skills to proceed? If all of these things feel good, you get to move on to the next step.
Okay.
If they don't, you're going to follow up with, I really, really appreciate you investing time with us today. I've learned a lot about you. You're really an impressive individual. And we will be in touch if I think that you're a match for a role that we have now or a match in the future.
So you're saying it that way so you don't have to follow up because you just said, we'll be in touch if we think you're a match.
Correct.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that I won't, because many times they might not be a match for that and I don't have anything else, but in months or weeks or days or years, I might have something to say. You know what? I remember meeting with that Chad guy. He would actually be great for this. Let's see if he's still available. And because I took the time to get to know him and I was kind and honest, he might take that call again.
Okay. Ben, have you ever done this without people realizing it? Like, have you ever done it not formally? Like, you're just hanging out with Bob somewhere at some event and you just keep asking these questions and peppering him to get to know him. And what you're really doing is taking him through this to see if he's a fit without him even realizing you're taking him through this interview.
I imagine there's thousands of people listening to this call that are saying, "Hey,
He asked me that, right?"
Because I do it nonstop. I'm driving with somebody somewhere. I'm at lunch. I meet them somewhere. I'm always evaluating, right? Is this person a good match for us or our company now or in the future? And it's just natural. Where'd you go to school? That's awesome. I got turned down from the UW. They didn't let me in. Glad they let you in. What'd you do next? That's great. So I go through this conversation. I'm just asking them about themselves, but I'm doing is I'm doing a life story.
Right. So it's just become natural conversation to you to find, because you're always, as you've talked about, always seeking talent. So you're going to get the life story on as many people as you can to be able to put little marks in your head as this person is talent one day for me, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things in that first interview that I've heard you ask the question before, I feel like you even asked it of me at one point in the very beginning, like, what have you ever been the best at?
Yeah. What have you been number one at?
Yeah, that's a question that I know comes up a lot. I think I believe it's that first interview. It wouldn't be the second one, but
yeah. I'm looking for somebody that have succeeded at something at the high level. No, I don't care if it was band camp or I don't care if it was a foot race or a volleyball game or a spelling bee, or if they wrote a thing or painted a picture and they got awards, all that kind of stuff. So we've got through the interview and we've decided in our minds that we'd like to proceed. Step 2.5 is, yes, I want to proceed. Step 3 is you're going to ask them to take a behavioral assessment. A behavioral assessment could be a DISC.
Oh, yes.
Myers-Briggs.
Yep.
Can you think of any other ones?
Oh, I can think of so many. I mean, there's Strength Finders, right?
Strength Finders is another great example.
Yeah. There's a new one going around that I've been watching go by on Facebook. People are taking these quizzes. I mean, there's a KPA.
Yeah.
There are so many of these.
AVA.
The AVA, right?
Anyway, there's a lot of them. Many people put too much weight into the behavioral assessment, in my opinion.
Say that again, please.
Yeah, they put too much weight into people having to be a specific behavior. The behavioral assessment is a way for you to get to know them at a deeper level and for you to understand if their behavior is the right match for the job. Here's an example. When I went to college, I believed that I wanted to be in computer science. Took the computer science classes, learned it, C++, Visual Basic, Scheme, all those things. But at the end of the day, my personality, my impatience, and my sociability were high enough that I was not cut out for the isolation that a developer has to endure and the attention to detail that you have to have so things don't crash.
Same way. I was going to be an architect. And I hate math. And I realized it really quickly going into it, right? It's just not going to be the thing. Well, Bob, what was the thing that you got into that you shouldn't have? Ben, the computer science, me, architect, other than being a basketball player, because we've seen your shot.
I probably shouldn't have been a loan officer. There's a lot of attention to detail needed in that job, and that's definitely not my strong suit.
Okay.
The thing the behavioral assessment does, Bob, it doesn't say that you can't do it. It kind of helps you identify, do you get energy from those tasks or does it suck the energy out of you? And somebody who has to be social every day, all day, they can do it. But at the end of the day, they're going to be exhausted and it's going to show up in their health and their happiness and their relationships and everywhere else. So you're trying to find people that are a good behavioral match for the role. Behaviors that you look for: sociability, patience, drive, stability, attention to detail. Those are all different things that you can learn from a variety of behavioral assessments. It does not eliminate them, but it sets you up for the next step in the process, which is the second interview. We're going to dive in to the second interview in part 2 of the hiring process.
Oh, that was exciting. Okay, so folks, now we've taken you through the first half of the hiring process. Behavioral assessment finishes that up. We're going to be coming back in our next episode and talking about what you do after that. So don't miss this, because remember, we are here helping you find talent, figure out how to hire talent, and you're going to have to stay tuned to figure out what we do with them after that. Make sure you're joining us in our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/winmakegive, where we can talk about these conversations. You can ask additional questions. You can get your feedback heard so we can hear some of your experiences with the hiring process on either side of the table. Until our next episode, folks, as always, do good.